The child spoke before anyone asked. She spoke before doors opened, before letters arrived, before blood cooled on the floorboards. And when Catherine Doyle spoke, grown men forgot how to breathe. In the winter of 1871, in a river town erased from most maps of the northeastern United States, people learned a truth older than fear itself. Some secrets do not wish to be discovered. They wish to be remembered. This is not a story about a haunted house. It is not a story about a curse passed through generations. It is a story about a child who knew things no living person should have known, and about the price paid by everyone who listened. The church records list her name once. The town ledger crosses it out twice. And the grave that should belong to Catherine Doyle has never been found. What follows was reconstructed from testimonies, confiscated journals, and a single audio transcript dictated decades later by a man who begged that his name never be spoken aloud again. Once you hear what Catherine said, you will understand why. The Doyle house stood at the edge of Blackwater Creek, where the river slowed and the fog refused to lift even at noon. It had been built before the Civil War by hands that never signed their names, and by 1871 its walls had learned how to listen. Catherine Doyle was 7 years old when the town first noticed her. Not because she screamed, not because she wandered at night, but because she answered questions that were never asked. The schoolmaster, Mr. Elwood Harris, was the first to write it down. In his attendance book, beside Catherine's name, he scratched a note so hard it tore the paper. The child speaks ahead of thought. That morning, he had been reading silently at his desk when Catherine lifted her head and said, calmly, without emotion, "Your brother drowned face down, not face up like you tell them." The room went silent. Mr. Harris's brother had drowned 6 years earlier. Only 2 men knew the truth of how the body had been found. One of them was buried. The other was standing at the blackboard, his chalk slipping from his fingers. When he demanded to know who told her, Catherine blinked slowly. "No one," she said. "He told me himself. He was very cold." The school closed early that day. Within a week, Catherine was no longer allowed to attend. Her mother, Margaret Doyle, was a widowed seamstress with hands permanently stained by ink and thread. She insisted her daughter was imaginative, sensitive, gifted. But neighbors began to notice that Catherine never played with other children. She stood near doorways, listening, watching, and sometimes smiling at nothing. The second incident occurred during Sunday service. Reverend Thomas Bell was delivering a sermon on repentance when Catherine, seated in the third pew, tugged her mother's sleeve. "Tell him to stop lying," she whispered, not softly. The Reverend faltered, cleared his throat, and continued. Catherine stood up. "You buried her behind the shed," she said, her small voice carrying through the church. "But she's not asleep. She keeps asking why you won't tell." The Reverend collapsed before he hit the pulpit. By nightfall, the story had spread through Blackwater like rot through wood. The town split itself in two, those who believed the child was touched by God, and those who believed she was touched by something else. What no one considered was the third possibility, that Catherine Doyle was not being spoken through. She was listening. Margaret began locking the doors at night. It did not help. Catherine would wake screaming, clawing at her own arms as if something beneath her skin was trying to crawl out. She spoke in her sleep, listing names, men, women, children, some long dead, others still alive and suddenly very afraid. Once, Margaret shook her awake after hearing her whisper near dawn. "What do they want?" Margaret begged. Catherine sat up, eyes wide and unfocused. "They want you to remember," she said. "And they want me to make you." The first death followed soon after. A butcher named Samuel Crowley was found hanging in his shop, feet inches from the floor, eyes frozen open. On the wall behind him, carved deep into the wood, were 3 words. She told me. No one asked who she was. They already knew. The town council met in secret. Windows were covered. Lamps were turned low. Catherine's name was never spoken aloud, only referenced with gestures or pauses thick with dread. "She knows about the well," one man whispered. "She knows about the fire," said another. A third man began to cry. They agreed on one thing only. The child had to be silenced, not killed, contained. They told Margaret it was for Catherine's protection, that the girl was ill, that a physician from Boston had agreed to take her somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. Margaret did not believe them, but when she tried to leave town, every road seemed to fold back on itself. Horses refused to move. Wheels broke. The river flooded without rain. On the final night, Catherine packed her own small bag. "I won't be gone long," she told her mother. "They never keep me." Margaret followed the carriage until the fog swallowed it whole. Catherine was taken to the old infirmary on Hawthorne Hill, a place abandoned after the war, its lower floors permanently damp, its upper rooms sealed and unused. According to the intake log, Catherine Doyle arrived at 9:12 p.m. According to the same log, written in different ink, she never left. What happened inside that building was not recorded officially, but pieces survived. A nurse's diary, found years later with pages torn out. A locked drawer containing teeth that did not match any known patient. And one sentence, written over and over again on the stone wall of cell 3, carved so deep the marks are still there. They never stopped talking. The screaming began on the third night. Not from Catherine, from the staff. Men reported hearing their dead relatives calling from empty rooms. Women claimed invisible hands pulled at their hair while they slept. One orderly tore out his own tongue after insisting it was lying to him. Catherine was moved underground, chained, drugged, prayed over. It did nothing. When the doctor demanded she explain how she knew so much, Catherine finally looked afraid. "I don't know everything," she said. "I only know what won't stay buried." On the sixth night, the infirmary caught fire. No one knows how it started. By the time townsfolk reached the hill, the upper floors were already collapsing. Screams echoed from below, dozens of voices, overlapping, some too old, some too young, some not human at all. They searched the ruins for Catherine's body. They did not find it. What they did find was worse. Every grave in Blackwater Cemetery had been opened from the inside. And in the ashes of the infirmary basement, carved into the stone where Catherine had been held, was a final message. "She heard you first." The town of Blackwater emptied within a decade. Maps stopped naming it. Church records burned. But some nights, when the fog rolls in thick and low near forgotten rivers, people still report a child's voice, soft, patient, waiting. If you hear her, do not answer. This was only the beginning. Catherine Doyle vanished into the smoke and silence, but the darkness she left behind did not fade. It grew. It whispered. The town of Blackwater was emptying, but not all who left were gone. Some stayed, tethered by a secret no one dared to speak aloud. Margaret Doyle, Catherine's mother, was the first to return. Haunted by dreams stitched with fire and cold voices, she crossed the cracked streets alone, each step echoing like a question no one could answer. She found the church abandoned, its wooden pews splintered, hymnals torn and scattered. On the altar, a single candle burned, though no one had lived here for months. Margaret's fingers trembled as she reached out, the flame flickering but never dying. At the edge of the town square, a group had gathered, but not the ones she remembered. Their faces were pale, eyes hollow, moving slowly, speaking in murmurs like the wind through dead branches. "They hear her," one whispered. "They never stop," another replied. Margaret's heart hammered. She had tried to forget, to believe Catherine's disappearances were a mercy, but the town was alive with the echoes of something old, something waiting. She followed the whispers to the riverbank where the water ran thick and black as ink. There, etched deep into the mud, were footprints. Too small for a child, but too sharp for an animal. The footprints led to the well. The well no one spoke about. The same well where, decades ago, a girl named Annabelle had vanished without a trace. Margaret peered into the darkness. The air was cold, a breath against her cheek. "Tell me," a voice said, soft, urgent, and chilling. Margaret stumbled back. "Who's there?" she demanded, voice cracking. But the river swallowed the sound. In the days that followed, townspeople who dared to remain spoke of Catherine's voice carried on the wind, calling names long dead and long forgotten, and one by one, they began to disappear. Margaret's notebook, recovered years later, contained one chilling entry. "She is not gone. She is everywhere. The voices are hers. The shadows answer her call. We buried the past, but she speaks for the secrets that claw from beneath. I fear the child is the town's curse and its salvation, both wrapped in one." The town of Blackwater was never found on any new map, but some say if you listen closely near a forgotten river at night, you can hear the faint whispers of a child who spoke secrets no one should ever know. The fog rolled in thicker that night, swallowing the crooked silhouettes of Blackwater's abandoned buildings. The wind carried whispers, soft, fragmented, barely there, but enough to freeze the blood of anyone who dared to listen. Margaret Doyle had not spoken to a living soul since returning to the empty town. She wandered the streets like a ghost searching for answers she was too afraid to find. Her fingers traced the rough wood of the Doyle house, its windows like dark, unblinking eyes watching her return. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of decay and something older, something that didn't belong to this world. On the cracked floorboards, she found a small, worn notebook, Catherine's. The pages were filled with strange drawings, webs of lines connecting names, dates, and symbols she did not recognize. At the center of it all was a drawing of a child, but the eyes were hollow, black voids that seemed to suck in the light. Margaret's eyes scanned the margins, where faint scribbles had been etched hastily. "They are beneath us." The well remembers, the river knows, as if the words themselves were warnings. Determined to uncover the truth, Margaret descended to the town's well, its opening covered in tangled roots and rusted iron. The darkness inside seemed endless, swallowing the weak beam of her lantern. She dropped a small stone and waited. Seconds later, a faint splash echoed back. But then, something else. A whisper rose from the depths, barely audible, like a breath on the back of her neck. "Come closer." Margaret's heart pounded as she stumbled backward, tripping over broken bricks. The well was not just a well. It was a gateway, a mouth hungry for memories long buried and sins never confessed. The townspeople who remained told stories in hushed tones, stories of children vanishing near the water, of strange lights beneath the river's surface, and voices that called them by name in the dead of night. One man, old and gaunt, claimed to have seen Catherine standing on the water itself, her eyes shining like stars, whispering secrets that made the trees shudder. Margaret found herself haunted by a recurring nightmare, Catherine's voice calling from beneath the water, begging her to listen. When dawn broke, she was gone. Only her notebook remained on the Doyle house's doorstep, open to a final entry. "If you find this, know that some secrets cannot be kept. They will claw their way back into the light, no matter how deep they are buried." Catherine did not vanish. She became the voice for those who have no one left to speak for them. And as the sun set on Blackwater, the whispers began again, louder this time, calling out through the fog. "She waits." The chill in the air was sharper now, cutting through what little warmth remained in Blackwater. Days had passed since Margaret disappeared, and the town's remaining few trembled under the weight of growing dread. Each night brought new whispers, not just heard but felt, like cold fingers trailing down spines, shadows stretching unnaturally long. A stranger arrived, a historian named Elias Thorne, drawn by the rumors that clung to Blackwater like mold. He carried a leather-bound journal filled with old letters and faded photographs. His eyes were weary, but his curiosity was relentless. Elias sought out the townsfolk who had not fled. They spoke reluctantly, their voices trembling as they recounted tales of Catherine Doyle and the horrors that followed her. "She knew things no child should," said Old Man Grady, voice barely a whisper. "Things that weren't meant to be spoken. After she came back from the infirmary, well, that's when the real darkness began." Elias pored over Margaret's notebook, deciphering the cryptic symbols and notes. It became clear. Catherine's knowledge wasn't mere childhood delusion. She was connected to something ancient, something buried beneath the town itself, something hungry. Following clues in the journal, Elias found himself drawn to the old infirmary ruins, now nothing but blackened stones and twisted metal. The air around the site hummed with an unearthly energy, a low vibration that seemed to crawl under skin and bone. Inside the cellar, Elias discovered a hidden chamber, its walls etched with symbols that pulsed faintly in the lantern light. The carvings told a story. Centuries ago, before Blackwater was built, a cult had thrived here, worshipping a forgotten deity that fed on secrets, memories, and souls trapped in silence. The well, the river, even the fog, they were all gateways and vessels for this ancient force. Elias's breath caught when he found a small wooden box, sealed tight. Inside lay a single, weathered doll, its eyes hollow, mouth sewn shut. A note, brittle with age, read, "She is the vessel. She hears what no one else can. Do not wake her." Suddenly, the ground beneath Elias trembled. A cold wind roared through the chamber as distant whispers turned into screams. The shadows coalesced into a shape, a small girl with empty eyes and a smile too wide for innocence. "Did you come to listen?" she whispered, voice layered with 1,000 others. Elias stumbled back, heart racing. The ancient evil that Catherine had been bound to was not finished. It was awakening, and this time, it wanted more than secrets. It wanted souls. The nights grew darker still. Blackwater was no longer just a town lost to time. It was a vessel, a living echo chamber for the horrors Catherine Doyle had unwittingly unleashed. Elias Thorne barely escaped the infirmary's cellar, but he carried with him the chilling knowledge that the entity beneath Blackwater was awakening, its hunger intensifying. Back in the nearby town where Elias found refuge, he pored over every document, every whisper of legend that might hold a key to stopping the darkness. The ancient deity was called Nokthra, a shadow that fed on silence, secrets, and the souls trapped in forgotten sins. The child, Catherine, had been the perfect vessel. She could hear the unspeakable, see through the veil separating the living from the dead. But once the cult was destroyed, they had tried to lock Nokthra away, burying the knowledge deep beneath Blackwater's well. It was a fragile prison, and Catherine, in her innocence, had torn it open. Elias realized the only way to end the nightmare was to confront the source itself. He returned to Blackwater alone. The fog swallowed him whole as he reached the riverbank near the old well. The water churned unnaturally, black as tar, reflecting a twisted moon. From the depths the whispers rose, soft, coaxing, maddening. "Come. Listen." "Remember." Elias felt the cold grip of the water pull at his boots. He resisted, shouting Catherine's name, trying to anchor himself to reality. Suddenly, the child appeared before him, her eyes hollow but filled with endless sorrow. "You cannot stop this," she said. "I only opened the door. Now it is time for it to speak." The waters bubbled, and from beneath rose countless faces, those lost to the well, to the town, to time. Their mouths moved, but no sound came. Elias raised his lantern, casting light on the faces that twisted in silent screams. He screamed back. In the moment that followed, the ground shattered, the river roared, and the voices exploded into a deafening chorus. And then silence. When Elias awoke, Blackwater was gone. The river was calm. The fog lifted. But the notebook lay in his hands, open to a final page written in a trembling hand. She spoke secrets no one should know. Now the silence has teeth. Beware the child who listens. The darkness never left. It waits for the next secret to be spoken. The sun rose over the empty fields where Blackwater once stood, casting long shadows across the cracked earth. The town was gone, erased, swallowed by time and silence. But the stories refused to die. Elias Thorne returned to the world beyond the river, carrying the weight of what he had witnessed. The notebook, Catherine's final message, was a constant reminder. Some truths are too dangerous, some voices too powerful. In his later years, Elias warned others, but most dismissed his tales as madness born from isolation. Yet, those who listened closely heard the faintest whisper, carried on the wind, like a child calling from the shadows. Remember, Catherine Doyle was never just a child. She was a conduit for the forgotten, the silenced, and the damned. Her voice echoed through history, a chilling reminder that some secrets demand to be heard, even if they bring darkness with them. If you ever find yourself near an abandoned river town cloaked in mist, and you hear a soft voice whispering your name, don't answer. Because the child who spoke secrets no one should know is still listening. Forgotten Remains, thanks you for joining this journey into the shadows. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because some stories are meant to be heard, but only if you dare. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your secrets close. The past is never truly gone. Forgotten Remains.